Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of the Mana Vault podcast, where we tap for 3, put our magic opinions on the table, and you decide if it's worth it to take one on your upkeep. I'm your host, my name is JC, and joining me today is not Arvin.
Exactly.
Oh, man.
It's me, Chris Alphanerd.
Hey, Chris. Thanks for joining me today while Arvin is in Vegas and unavailable.
I know, he's living it up in Vegas. MTG Las Vegas, to be exact.
Yep. Good times, good times. Well, Chris is joining me this week, and we're going to be talking about pre-release for Innistrad Crimson Vow. But before we get into that, I want to remind you that we have a Patreon, and your support of our Patreon is what makes this show and all of our content possible. So if you want to head over to patreon.com/ManaVaultYT, that's going to be the link, and for as low as a couple dollars a month, you can support us and help make this stuff happen, and we really appreciate it, so thank you all.
Thanks.
All right, so let's get into our opening segment, which is What Card Do? And today we're going to talk about my absolute favorite card in Magic the Gathering.
Of course. Do you want me to say it?
Yeah, go ahead, because I don't have the guts to say it.
It's Blood Moon. My personal favorite, and apparently the bane of JC's existence.
Something like that. Hey, Chris, for people who don't know, what's a Blood Moon?
A Blood Moon. It is 1 red, 2 generic. All non-basic lands are now mountains.
Yep. Lovely little enchantment. Notably, for those who don't understand the interaction, it's not our mountains in addition to their other types like Urborg. It's our mountains. End statement. They lose their other types, they lose their other abilities, they become mountains.
Yeah, so JC, why do you hate it so much? Or
Well,
sorry, why do you love it so much?
I am such a big fan of this card because it shuts down, among other things, my favorite modern deck, Tron. But it shuts down any non-basic mana base. If you're not running basics, then this is a real problem for you. And it's a card that's seen a good amount of play over Modern's history, as well as a little bit in Legacy, sometimes in Commander for the truly cruel individuals out there.
Almost like me.
Yeah. Chris, you're an Enchantress player in Modern.
That is correct.
And this is a card that's been in your main board before. Still is for the primary Enchantress variant. But we don't see it a ton of other places in Modern right now, despite a lot of decks that have 3, 4, maybe 5 color mana bases. Elementals, Blink, that kind of thing. Even Control will splash an extra color for Prismatic Ending. And with these greedy mana bases going around, how come people aren't playing more Blood Moon?
So, I think it's a meta call.
Mm-hmm.
And in my opinion, I think the meta is currently situated perfectly for it. Except there are some hyper-aggressive decks that Blood Moon is just instantly out.
Yeah.
Like, it has no chance against some of these crazy decks out there. Like, if Ragavan, maybe? Like, hello.
Yeah, I'm coming right in on turn 1, turn 2. I do agree that the aggression is part of it, with cards like Darcy and Ragavan kind of dominating the format. And as well, we've gotten a lot better answers in Modern Magic. I mean, Counterspell just got added to Modern. That certainly answers it. And we want cards nowadays that do something, right? A Ragavan kills you. A Darcy kills you. A Blood Moon says, well, you might not get to play Magic.
Yeah, it feels like more of a niche card, but again, when you hit it in game 1, no one ever expects it.
No.
I mean, if I'm sleeving up against, Tron, they think they're very clever, they get Tron off before they can play anything, though.
It's huge. And even sideboard games against Tron or against a very greedy mana base, Death Shadow decks don't play a lot of basics, maybe 2. The Blink decks play a few, but they only have so many of those and usually are limited to like green and blue, maybe white. So getting it out, even games 2 and 3 against them, can feel really devastating when they go, okay, I have to naturally draw specifically my basics, or I have to use my fetch lands right now with Blood Moon on the stack to go get basic lands, and then I'm cut on the other colors for a while until I get lucky or something.
And everything considered, though, I believe Enchantress and Blue Moon are going to be, well, personally, they're my favorite decks because again, Blood Moon. But I believe those are going to be the only two decks that can viably run Blood Moon in the main.
Yeah.
Because again, after game one, it kind of feels bad if you're playing against a hyper aggro deck.
Yeah, exactly.
But thankfully, with Enchantress, you have so many different answers, and with a combo, you can just survive nonstop.
Yeah, and Blue Moon tends to play red removal alongside blue draw spells and counter spells, that sort of thing.
Exactly.
So having a Blood Moon is just another piece in what you're already doing, and you still are trying to play this tempo game until you can get ahead. And so, yeah, Blood Moon doesn't feel that bad in that matchup, even if you're playing against Burn or something else super aggressive.
Everything considered, though, after game one with that, it kind of loses its charm.
Yeah.
Because then players know how to play against it, obviously, unless you're playing Tron.
Yeah, exactly. So even as a Tron player, I'm telling you guys, play more Blood Moon. It's good.
It is.
It's a good card. And certainly in the Blue Moon and Enchantress decks, having that in game one, gonna hit somebody really hard, especially me.
Exactly.
Anyway, let's move on to our main topic. We're going to be talking about our experiences with pre-release for Crimson Vow. So you went to one pre-release.
Yes, I went to Two-Headed Giant with I teamed up with Austin, and I gotta say my pre-release kit was stacked.
Yeah.
So
you had some nuts pulls.
Yeah. For those of you that are listening, I have Kaya Geist Hunter, Maniform Hellkite, Cultivator Colossus. I have Catilda, Sorin, and then some other junk rare.
Yeah.
But the point is, though, I have 3 mythics in the pool, and that Kaya was full art.
Yep.
Value Town. Like,
not Sorin, but Edgar.
Oh, sorry,
Markov.
Edgar. My bad.
The creature Markov, not the planeswalker.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, Kaya, I personally think she's probably the weakest of the 3 planeswalkers, but she's still, in limited, a planeswalker is a planeswalker in a lot of cases. So Kaya Geist Hunter, 1 white-black for a legendary planeswalker, comes in with 3 loyalty. +1, creatures you control gain Death Touch until end of turn. Put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature token you control.
It's pretty good.
-2 until end of turn if 1 or more tokens would be created under your control. Twice that many are created instead. And then -6, exile all cards from all graveyards, then create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying for each card exiled this way.
Pretty strong.
Yeah, over the course of the game, that minus can get pretty darn annoying. My complaint about Kaya has been that she doesn't defend herself super well, but that +1 makes you very aggressive, just like giving all your creatures Death Touch and potentially pumping one of your tokens. It's like, hey, do you want to block this? Exactly. I don't think so. But I'm certainly more impressed by the Colossus and the Maniform Hellkite. A 4/4 flyer for 4 that makes a bunch more flying haste tokens, even only until end of turn. And the Colossus entering the battlefield, letting you put a land to play, draw some extra cards, and becomes a big moron with trample.
It gets pretty terrifying very quickly.
I did get hit by this thing twice during
really?
individual pre-release. The only reason I was still alive is because my opponent did almost nothing until turn 7, until they played this. And they... I had gained a little bit of extra life off of a card that we're going to talk about in a little bit. And so I was able to stay alive and kill them on the crackback. But yeah, like, I was looking at that like, okay, I have 1, maybe 2 cards in my deck that deal with that, and I haven't drawn them, and I'm on the clock now.
That's pre-release for you.
Yeah.
So I only played in 1 event. How many events did you play in, JC?
I ended up playing in 3. I played 3 solo pre-releases. The first one I went 3-2. Felt okay. The 2 people I lost to, ironically, ended up playing each other in the finals. So they were the 2 undefeateds going into the last round.
I mean, it's not that bad then.
No, it feels okay. I was like, okay, these people earned their wins against me. I definitely had a couple games of mana issues in that pre-release, so adjusted the strategy a little bit for the other 2. The second one I went 4-1. That one felt really good, and the person I lost to again went to the finals. Their deck was hyper aggressive. I was a little slower. I went to 3 games with that person. The 2 I lost felt like mana issues for me. The 1 that they lost felt mana issues for them. So you live with the bad beats. That's variance.
Exactly.
And then the 3rd one, I drew with no losses in the finals with Arvin, actually. And that deck felt really bonkers. And we're going to talk about some of the cards that were in it. And just sort of talk about some of the things that make this format work. How did you and Austin end up doing in that 2-headed giant?
I believe we took, it was second. Yeah,
second place.
We tied for second. I had to leave a little bit early, but thankfully it was like right after our match finished. So
it worked out well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It worked out.
Yep.
So overall, it was a very enjoyable experience. I gotta say, I did enjoy this set a bit more than Midnight Hunt.
Agreed. I completely agree.
Given maybe just because I'm a vampire fan, like I won't hide that.
Yeah. But I mean, so let's talk about some of the things that made this format work. And one of the big ones is there was a bunch of mana fixing in this set.
Oh yeah, exactly.
So at common we have 3 options for mana fixing. We have Evolving Wilds, the classic. Tap and sack it, search your library for any basic land card, put it on the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. Helped you splash your 3rd color if you wanted to. Weaver of Blossoms is a 2 and a green werewolf, 2/3 with Daybound. Add 1 mana of any color by tapping it. And then on the flip side, it's a 3/4 that taps for 2 mana of any color.
Very good.
I definitely saw some people accelerate with this, and on a turn where I did not cast a spell or where they chose not to cast a spell and then I wasn't able to cast 2, they were able to flip it and accelerate from like 5 to 7 and just go off.
I mean, especially with Daybound, well, with Day and Night in 2-headed giant, it can be pretty screwy.
Yeah, exactly, because you both have to cast a spell to keep it from flipping.
Exactly.
And then Honored Heirloom, honestly, a manalith with an added ability of exiling cards from graveyards, especially in a format where we care about our graveyards.
Yes, in this format, I feel like that's going to be better.
Yeah, I was a big fan.
It kind of does everything you want.
Yeah, there's a lot of recurring creatures from your graveyard to your hand, a lot of raised dead effects, and I definitely got by people using this to get rid of creatures I wanted to get back. There's Disturb is back in this set.
That's pretty big.
Yep, so now they flip into auras, but I definitely saw people able to get auras out of opponents' graveyards and make sure those didn't come back. And then just hitting things that care about being in your graveyard. Yeah, I was pretty happy seeing this card. And then at Uncommon, we have Reclusive Taxidermist and Foreboding Statue, both of which are creatures, 2-mana creatures, or 2 and 3 mana, excuse me. They're 1/2s that tap for a mana of any color. The Foreboding Statue flips into a 5/5 that adds a mana at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, and the Reclusive Taxidermist gets a +3/+2 as long as there are 4 more creature cards in your graveyard. That's pretty common in this format. Again, graveyard decks and just creatures dying in limited. That's going to happen over the course of the game. Unless your opponent has Honored Heirloom, because then they're just going to keep it free.
Yep.
So it felt pretty free to go ahead into 3 colors. Even if you were just splashing for 1 or 2 cards, I felt pretty confident doing that. Even with just 1 or 2 of these cards in my deck. And even if I wasn't playing green, Evolving Wilds is in this format.
Yeah, I will admit I was going to go Mardu. And I definitely could have, but I wanted to go with more consistency.
Sure. But even if you're just playing 2 colors, Evolving Wilds feels pretty okay.
Yeah, I mean, you're filtering.
Yep. That's huge in 40-card decks. We want to take a sec to talk about a couple of the finishers that really, I thought, were some of the bombiest in this format. These 2 are Brambleworm and Dreadfast Demon. I was lucky enough to have Dreadfast Demon in 2 different pre-releases, and in one of them I had 2 copies.
Really?
Oh, yeah. If you're not familiar, you probably want to get familiar if you're going to play limited in this set. Dreadfast Demon is 5 black for a creature demon. It's 6/6 with flying, and at the beginning of your end step, sacrifice a non-demon creature. If you do, create a token that's a copy of Dreadfast Demon. Do you like 6/6s?
I guess I have to.
Yeah. No, 6/6 with flying that almost always will make a second 6/6 with flying. Number one, that's a lot of value, but number two, that's really hard to get rid of. You have to have 2 unconditional removal spells. And as we're going to talk about, a lot of the removal in this set only deals a few damage if in the case of red, or, you know, there's a couple green fight cards, I think. And other than that, you need to pay a pretty high amount of mana to actually get rid of a creature. So a 6/6, that's a real body.
Yep.
And speaking of 6 toughness, Bramble Worm, 6 and a green for a 7/6 with reach and trample, and when it enters the battlefield, you gain 5 life, and you can pay 2 and a green to exile it from your graveyard to gain another 5 life. This thing is a beating.
I agree.
I got to play with it. I got to play against it. I was never happy to see it on the other side of the battlefield.
It's pretty terrifying.
Yeah. Coming down and just being able to block a flyer for a turn, which we're going to get to. Flyers are very relevant in this format. But also, you know, gaining you 5 life and then potentially gaining you 5 life later.
Yeah, it does a lot for just being an uncommon.
Yeah. It's huge. It's huge. Okay, let's talk about blood.
Oh boy.
Big mechanic in this format. Blood is an artifact token that says 1, tap, and discard a card, sacrifice this artifact, draw a card. Did you get to play with blood at all?
Not really, I'm going to be honest. I really wish I did.
But you got to see it a bunch.
Yes, I did get to see it a bunch, just was not in my deck.
And how did it look to you? What was your take on blood as a whole?
So overall, I like it. It's very flavorful.
Mm-hmm.
Get it flavorful?
Yeah, the taste of blood.
Exactly.
All these vampires.
So it was very flavorful. I like it. I think in the right decks. I think in maybe even a constructed format with Madness.
Mm-hmm.
That can be just really good.
Mm-hmm.
I think it brings a lot to the table as just a mechanic in general.
Yeah, I think the comparison we kind of get to look at for blood is clues with Investigate. So clues, you don't have to discard a card, but you have to pay 2 mana to sacrifice the artifact to draw a card. I'm personally a big fan of clues. I think Tireless Tracker is one of my favorite green creatures. It's just gets a lot of value and gets large over the course of the game. And blood felt really good in this format to just be able to pitch away your extra lands or pitch your Dreadfast Demon when you have only 2 lands in hand and you really need to find a way to get your lands in hand.
Overall, I was very impressed with it. I think, especially in pre-release, this turned all those dead draws into possibly gas.
Yep. And just having it as a mechanic that was pretty present in certainly black and red, less so in the other colors, but there was a little bit of blood in some of the other colors. I think white had it the least, but like you said, dead draws going away, turning into real cards. I felt very good about blood, and I recommend prioritizing it if you can. If you're in red and black.
Yeah, especially in draft.
Yeah, especially when limited formats.
Yeah, when you can actually draft that instead of just opening up your pool and then boom, you don't have any blood.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about exploit.
Ah, yes.
Now this is a returning mechanic from Khan's block. Yeah.
It was from Khan's block.
Yeah. It was a Sultai mechanic. Exploit, if you don't know, says when this creature enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice a creature. It can be itself, it can be something else. And then when you exploit, it typically has some sort of effect. So an example from this set, Rot-Tide Gargantua is a 3/black 5/4. It's a zombie, I want to say horror. Enters the battlefield, it has exploit, so you may sacrifice a creature, and when you do, each opponent sacks a creature as well.
Yep.
So they definitely set us up, especially in black, with a lot of cards that cared about they wanted to die, or you got them back after they died, or something back after they died.
Yeah, I mean, the archetype was very, very strong, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, we have Doomed Dissenter.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite cards that actually
really
synergizes pretty
solid reprint
Exactly.
from Amonkhet. Yeah. Two mana 1/1, and when it dies, you get a 2/2 zombie.
Exactly.
No decay this time.
Exactly.
Zombies being a relevant creature type on Innistrad is a big deal as well. But just the fact that, like, hey, I don't feel bad about sacking this 1/1 because it's, by the time I'm playing these exploit creatures, it's probably not the best thing on the battlefield.
Exactly.
And then, hey, I got a 2/2 out of it.
Yeah, I mean, in a worst case scenario, it's a chump blocker.
Yeah. Yeah, you throw it under the bus as well. So you'll play this card anyway.
Yeah.
But it gets you value out of exploit. Another example, the Persistent Specimen. A single black for a 1/1 skeleton. 2 and a black, return it from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Just gets itself back instead. Like, there is a mana cost to that, but okay, I will throw this under the bus, pay 3 mana on your end step to bring it back tapped, do it again, and eventually get some value out of it with sacrificing it to an exploit creature or whatever it might be.
Again, it's bare minimum chump blocker.
Yep. Another one you could pitch to a blood token and be like, hey, I'm going to get this back eventually.
Exactly.
Don't feel bad about that. One I was really impressed with at Uncommon is Undead Butler. 1 and a black for a 1/2 zombie. When it enters the battlefield, you mill 3 cards. And when it dies, you may exile it. When you do, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Felt more okay with pitching creatures or letting them die in combat because I had this thing and knowing, hey, this will die and I'll get something back. Or I'll sack this to exploit and get some value out of it. And then the last card we want to talk about is Undying Malice. You want to read this one for people, Chris?
Sure. Until end of turn, target creature gains. When this creature dies, return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control with a 1/1 counter on it.
Yep. I saw a lot of people using this more for exploit triggers and honestly, like, to make something fight or something like that, rather than as just a combat trick. But, you know, the versatility there at 1 black for an instant feels pretty darn okay.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you there.
Okay, let's talk about removal in this format. Because
yes.
the removal I felt was a little all over the place.
I do agree. There's some really good removal, and then there's really bad removal.
Yep. I will say that Flame Blessed Bolt, which we're going to talk about in a sec, felt really good in a lot of cases, but it also helped define that the magic number for toughness was 3.
Exactly. I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Flame Blessed Bolt, single red for an instant, deals 2 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If that creature or planeswalker would die this turn, exile it instead. Lot of X2s, a lot of X1s running around, and this was totally reasonable for getting rid of a lot of them, or combining in combat to just deal another 2 and go, okay, you don't actually get to get the death trigger off of Doom Dissenter or Undead Butler or whatever it might be. It's going straight into exile instead. So that felt pretty okay. But then to get some truly unconditional removal, you had to pay 3 or 4 mana. We had Sigarda's Imprisonment. We had Hero's Downfall as a reprint. Now at Uncommon.
Exactly. Now
felt pretty okay.
Yeah, now at Uncommon. I wish it was common.
Yep.
That'd be better.
But having to pay 3 mana for that and 4 mana for Bleed Dry, 2 black instant, target creature gets -13/-13 till end of turn. If it would die, exile instead.
Not bad for Pauper.
Not bad at all. But having to pay 3 and 4 mana for the reasonable removal, and then all the way up to like 6 mana for Grim. I cannot remember the name of it, but it's destroy target creature and create 2 blood tokens for 5 and a black. That felt like a lot of mana to pay, and sometimes, like, this is not the most aggressive I've seen an Innistrad format be. I think Midnight Hunt was more aggressive than this, but 6 mana, like, you gotta wait late into the game to get to that.
Yeah, it definitely felt like this. It felt like this format was a bit slower, especially because we don't have werewolves running around everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. It didn't quite feel like Shadows or Eldritch Moon slow. Like, I think those were a lot grindier.
Yeah, this feels more. It's more tactical, almost paying homage to what vampires are portrayed as. You know,
exactly.
They're more tactical in their in their actions.
Yeah, they've been planning things out for thousands of years.
Exactly, in comparison to werewolves being very brash and...
Yep. Eat
and
now, think about it later.
Exactly. Math is for blockers.
Math is for blockers. So speaking of 3 toughness, the other thing I think I saw a lot of is that flying was a huge keyword in this format. I saw a lot of decks that just were not able to block flyers, and that ended up being an enormous downside for those players. 2 of the creatures I have sitting in front of me are Courier Bat and Markov Waltzer. Courier Bat I want to talk about because I had this card, I want to say all 3 pre-releases that I played in, and it says it's a 2/2 flyer for 2 and a black, and when it enters the battlefield, if you gain life this turn, return up to 1 target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. That's fine. There was not tons of life gain in this set. There was some, but I honestly felt very okay just playing this as a 3-mana 2/2 flyer and going, all right, go to combat.
Yeah, I mean, being able to get that little bit of damage in really does add up in the end.
Yep. And people would use Flame Blast Bolt on this, but okay, I still got in for 4-6 damage because you didn't have something with flying or with reach. There were not a ton of reach creatures in this set, or at least not a ton that I saw. There's a 1/4 that's a werewolf. That one's okay.
I'm pretty sure there's a couple other rares rather that also do that. But
yeah,
when you're playing limited or sealed, you can't count on those rares.
Yeah, and we talked about Bramble Worm having reach and being able to block for a turn before it starts killing them, but it's a 7-drop. Yeah. This comes out on turn 3. What are you going to do about this for the first, 3-4 turns that it's out there, if you even draw your Bramble Worm?
Exactly.
The other one is Markov Waltzer. This card was just a beating every time I saw it. It's 2, a red and a white, for a 1/3 with flying and haste. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, up to 2 target creatures you control each get +1/+0 until end of turn. This is a 4-mana 2/3 flying haste, at worst. At best, it's pumping one of your other flyers and getting in for a whole bunch of damage. I saw someone against me have 2 of these.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, I just got 6'd. I just got 6 dead. Yeah, I did not win that one.
Needless to say.
Yeah, no. So and this thing having 3 toughness, it's expensive to get rid of a 3 toughness creature in this format. I got to play with the I think it's called Graph Reaver. It's 1 and a black for a 3/3 with exploit. If you exploit a creature, destroy target planeswalker, and in the beginning of your upkeep, it deals 1 damage to you. But it was just a 3/3 for 2 mana, and I just turned it sideways, and people could not get rid of it. It took so much to get rid of it. You had to put 2 creatures in front of it, and they both died because one of them had 1 toughness or something. Yeah. So 3 toughness.
Magic number.
It's the magic number. The last category we want to talk about here is finishing the game with damage. 2 of the cards I was particularly impressed with that kind of added a little bit of reach and got you around board stalls, which we saw a few of in this format, just because people would have these big things on the ground. Voldaren Epicure and Vampire's Kiss.
Both very good cards.
Yep. Notably, they both say create a blood token, which I'm pretty happy with. Vampire's Kiss, I originally was not impressed with this card, and then I saw people playing it against me, and I was like, oh, yeah, I need to put this in my deck, because this is really good. 1 and a black for a sorcery. Targeted player loses 2 life, you gain 2 life, create 2 blood tokens. I kept hands that were just 2 lands in this, because I knew I'd be able to pitch my 7 drops and go, okay, I'm going to find a land eventually.
Yeah, it's not bad, and I think it's going to be one of the more powerful commons, I guess you could say.
Yep, and certainly in the limited format. I had a bunch of games where I would attack and my opponent would block certain ways because they knew, okay, I'm going to go to 2 life, and I'm like, Vampire's Kiss?
Exactly. It's a get 'em kind of moment.
Yep. And Voldaren Epicure, the exact same. Single red for a 1/1 vampire. When it enters the battlefield, deals 1 damage to each opponent and create a blood token. I just got to put people down to 1 because they, the classic philosophy is one is not none. If you're at 1 life, you're still alive, and that's totally fine. But I actually, this was hilarious. I got to attack with this thing among other creatures. My opponent blocked and killed it alongside of an Undead Butler. The Butler died, got me this back to hand, and I played it and put them to exactly 0.
That's great.
And in fairness, it was one of those board states where they were going to die the next turn anyway, but we were both kind of laughing about it. It's like, oh, yeah, I probably should have blocked one of the other ones. This is just a 1/1. Whoops. It's like, well, here we are. So yeah, it get some reach in your decks. Like, get some definitely some reach creatures, but also get the things that hit an opponent, because with the board stalls that definitely exist in this format, I'm gonna say you're gonna need it. And get some creatures that get bigger than 2 toughness.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's gonna wrap it up. Any final thoughts on the limited format in Crimson Vow?
Overall, I gotta rate this a solid 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I was gonna put it there too. Yep. I would happily play this format again. In the future, after it's no longer the most recent set.
After it's out of print, maybe.
Yeah.
Scroll some boxes away.
I was gonna say probably set aside a draft booster box and come play this again. I had a ton of fun playing with this. I definitely wanted to draft red and black a lot because I wanted to play with vampires. But I played with some white. I played with some green. I didn't play any blue this time around.
I did recognize a lack of blue in my matches that I actually had.
Yeah. And like the blue that I saw was neat. Like there were some zombie synergies and stuff like that. But a lot of the people I saw playing blue is because their rares or mythics were blue, and because their red just didn't have removal or something like that.
It seems like overall it was very lacking, I would say, in this set. Compared to other sets, of course.
Yep. I think blue was more playable in Midnight Hunt. It wasn't the best color by any means, but like blue-green felt really good in the last set, and here is just like, yeah, the blue decks didn't feel all that fantastic. I would rather just I really wanted to play black. Black just seems like the dominant color in this set, but red's also very strong.
I agree.
Cool. Well, why don't we move to our closing segment, Scoop Speed? And since Chris is a guest, we're going to have him share a wonderful story about a 5 toughness creature that didn't get to do what it wanted to do.
Yes. So, long story short, the moral of the story is going to be to reading the card explains the card, right, JC?
Yep.
Now, so here's the story. So this was Dominaria Pre-Release.
Okay.
I believe I had played in 5 pre-releases before, like during that weekend.
Yep.
So this is the final pre-release.
This is the last one.
Yeah, I was completely burnt out, no sleep at all.
Yep.
And
this is back when we had midnight pre-releases,
yes.
So we were up all night. We went out and got donuts afterwards.
Yeah, Victory Donuts, right?
Feels good. But okay, so you're burnt out. It's the 5th pre-release.
It's finals.
It's the last round.
It's the last round. I am currently undefeated, playing against another undefeated person, which makes this feel way worse.
If I remember correctly, you were on like 4 or 5 colors too. So
yeah.
You were on greedy mana based deck.
Yeah, and it worked out.
Yeah.
Everyone else was super tired. Unfortunately, I was a bit too tired.
Yeah.
So back to the story.
Yeah.
So I had Grun the Lonely King out. For those of you that don't know what it is, it's 2 green, 4 generic, kicker 3. If Grun the Lonely King was kicked, it enters the battlefield with 5/1/1 counters on it.
Mm-hmm.
That's not really the relevant part, but we'll get to that.
It gets bigger.
Exactly. Whenever Grun attacks alone, double its power and toughness until the end of turn.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on its own, it's cool. It's
a 6 mana 5/5 that becomes a 10/10 when it attacks alone.
Yeah, of course, if someone has a chump blocker, it's the bane of your existence.
Yep.
Now, here's where the kicker... no pun intended.
The kicker.
Exactly, no pun intended there.
Strangely, this card we're about to talk about does not have kicker.
Exactly. So, it's run amok. It is 1 red and 1 generic. Target attacking creature gets +3/+3. That's all I thought it said.
Yep.
I was
until end of turn.
Exactly. Yeah, until end of turn.
You read that part.
And I was extremely sleep deprived. And I just forgot something in the middle there. JC, what does that say in the middle?
+3/+3 and gains trample until end of turn.
It gains trample? I would have never guessed. So, I was attacking with Grun, and my opponent was making, I don't know what he was using. He was making tokens.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he had a Karn or something like that.
Okay, sure.
So he was making tokens, and I was presenting lethal every turn. I didn't even know it. And then I was just so done, even with a run amok in my hand. I may have had 2 run amoks in my hand.
Yep.
And I was just so sleep deprived. I just said, no, I concede. And my opponent even gave me the benefit of the doubt. Was like, are you sure you want to do that?
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, I can't get through.
Yep.
And needless to say, they were at 2 life.
Yep.
And
you were attacking with a 20/20.
Correct.
Then afterwards, you came and told us what happened.
Yep.
And somebody pointed out to you, he's like, that card gives trample, right?
It was actually Austin.
Was it Austin?
Yep.
Okay.
Austin was watching the match, and afterwards he said, hey Chris, you should read that card again. I was like, what? It just says target attacking creature gets +3/+3. Oh, and gains trample until end of turn. So that is my biggest blunder in all of Magic.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so bad. Everyone in the LGS kept giving me run amoks or slipping it in my bag.
I may or may not still have a pile of run amoks in my car specifically to give to Chris because of this stupid story. And every single time he just rips it in half.
Yep, I did bite it and actually ate one of the cards once.
You did do that. I saw you do that.
Yep. Just to show my burning hatred. Get it because it's red. Burning hatred for this card.
Yep. Run amok. Solid combat trick, especially when you read the card, because that explains what it does. In fairness, I don't think anyone can really fault you for misreading that card. It wouldn't have been unreasonable to see just target attacking creature gets +3/+3 till end of turn. Maybe we would have expected like first strike or something like that, but
exactly.
But yeah, you were reading it. I think you were evaluating like, yeah, he's just gonna keep making tokens. I can't get through. I have this one big idiot, but I'm not winning this game, so I'm kind of ready to be done. Oh,
moral of the story, kids: always read the card, because reading the card explains the card.
And whenever it doesn't, that's what you call a judge for, because those cards, they're problematic anyway.
Exactly.
All right, well, that's going to wrap it up for us. Thank you so much for joining me, Chris.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. We will see you guys on the next episode. Until then, take care of yourselves. Be sure to check out our YouTube channel, and thanks for joining us.
See you guys.